So the first work is Nemo Observatorium. It's practically it's a cylindrical space where you can observe kind of a typhoon. And in the middle of it there is a chair for the visitor. So you can, if you arrive into the space, you see a visitor experiencing this. So you see a human being in the center of the eye of the storm, if you want, where it is very calm and safe. At least you don't see that from the outside. That's what you experience once you go inside. And then it started as a kind of, a device where, of course you have this human being in this very complicated environment, and maybe he's trying to observe the patterns and to really concentrate, but it's going too fast. So it's a kind of impossible task. It's impossible to achieve and to get the overview. And then the other work is the shrink. There have been also various versions and more or less. In this case, it's 3 models with where there are 3 people being vacuum packed, like the ordinary food packaging plastic. Originally, this was designed as something to experience physically by the visitors themselves, not necessarily as a performance, but somehow often it's presented first as a performance, and afterwards people can experience this in a more private setup. It's a very intense physical experience, and the interesting part is that the experience inside is very opposite to the image outside. It is a very safe and a very comfortable experience, at least if you are really adapting to the environment. And that's, both projects are actually about this theme, or it's a bit a metaphor, the one very physically, to this notion that however threatening or difficult or mysterious the reality or the environment can be, it's always a challenge or a matter of adapting to this environment, and then the situation can become very positive. Yeah, I think that was, I started, in the very beginning, my practice. I worked a lot with dancers, and one of them was Meg Stewart, and she's very specialized in like the limitations of the body or the impossibility and that was very inspiring. I also used that later on, but I think it's maybe constraints also of I'd made a series of works, for example, Nemo is something in between, but where I would try to exclude all kinds of influences, like put somebody in a black box, you exclude the daylight, you exclude other people. It's to purely give an individual experience, and to really neutralize all the environment. And then, in a way, then you just have to light a match, and it will already be a very intense experience. So in a way, it's kind of an easy trick to limit all the possible disturbance, and then with a very small effect you can achieve a big emotional relation. I must say that later on now I'm making maybe more environments where there is more openness or more interaction with various visitors or simultaneous, like there is, and that's of course letting go of this control of the environment and allowing for more possibilities. And I think this is actually more interesting to have this. Somebody else was calling it the game, in a way, of the installation, where there are a certain set of rules and a certain, of course, I make an environment, so I decide certain things, but then the outcome is really defined more. If you have more than one visitor, there are many more images or many more associations possible. For example, with the project with the compass, where you are guided while you walk. That's a good example of how the meaning is really defined or the image is really telling a story only when the visitor is dealing with this device. When he is resisting to the machine reacts more intensely. When the person is very listening and very sensitive, it becomes a very positive or gentle experience. I like this term of the training machine or a training environment where, for example, the shrink is it's really an exercise for the visitor and even for me. I have done it many times, but every time again, it's an exercise to find. Actually, also purely aesthetically, it's not a choreography. The positions I take are purely decided by this plastic, which is. I mean, of course, I make a little bit of choices, but it's the starting point is really the material that is controlling me, and then it's not. You cannot become totally passive. Neither. You have to discover the possibilities and really go into a symbiosis with this environment, and maybe that's that's one of the very important skills of us as humans to adapt to our changing environment. Well, I hope it's both. I hope it starts with a very physical, immersive, and it's very accessible. I mean, you don't have to have a whole art history background to start at least this experience. And you don't need to read the whole explanation to begin with. But I hope that that then there is a process that starts. And unfortunately, in the festival situation, it's so busy and people are queuing, and there's very little time for this. So it stays a bit on the first entertaining level. But I hope I also try to make to really use the one thing is this physical experience. And because I also feel that a lot of, emotions are not only a mental thing. I think emotions are very closely related to our physical condition or our physical sensations. And maybe I would feel more comfortable with a different light here, or maybe I would feel less exposed if I would be behind a table now, I think it's quite comfortable. But I think there's a lot of unconscious processes going on in when emotions are created, or when not only emotions but also quite rational, so-called rational decisions we are making. And I was maybe giving the example again of this artificial weather we are more and more surrounded by. And with that artificial weather, I mean the air conditioning, the lighting in the house, the transportation systems, vibrations, all this physical, tactile orientation, taking the elevator, all this input that's, I think, really affecting maybe the way I'm talking now to you. Yeah, and then a second element is that I try to make one thing is this physical experience in both installations is present, and the second one is more the metaphor or the image of the visitor inside this environment, and then it's more it's more a metaphor, or it's more an image for what you can contemplate on this the Ecce Homo or so it's there's a second. Or often, mostly if you stand in queue, of course, this image is something you experienced before. But if it's in a normal museum space, people tend to also spend time afterwards